Hey. Hey. Thank you. Stand by.
All right.
Go ahead.
My name is Lee Lambert.
I'm Judy Rich.
I'm Bobby Robbins.
I'm Brent Rod.
I'm Alex Horvath.
I'm Chuck Huckleberry.
I'm Steve Egan.
And I'm Joe Snell.
And I'm your host, Tom McNamara. And this is the Pivot Playbook. March 2020 was the start of an unprecedented time in our community and our world when the COVID-19 pandemic hit and challenged every facet of our society. Our collective health was at stake, and so were our businesses who were trying to survive an economic shutdown none of us had ever experienced before. As we begin to emerge from a year of upheaval in our lives, Southern Arizona is in a better place than most, according to economists and experts making projections about the post-COVID economy. Today, we will explore why analysts believe in Southern Arizona and how we as a business community are working to capitalize on that. We'll introduce you to the Pivot Playbook, our formal action plan developed by leaders at Sun Corridor Incorporated, which includes 5 focus areas related to a series of national rankings that suggest that Southern Arizona is poised for recovery that will be quicker and stronger than most. First, we're going to talk with Judy Rich, President and CEO at TMC Healthcare and Chair of the Board at Sun Corridor Incorporated. She will tell us where we're headed as a region, how we are pivoting to get our economy back on track, and how we're addressing the many emerging trends brought on by the worldwide pandemic. Judy, economies around the country, around the world have been struggling through the COVID-19 pandemic, and Southern Arizona is no exception. But even at the beginning of the economic downturn, we were getting nuggets and bits and pieces that lead us to believe that we will probably be okay on a post-COVID recovery. Now, what about the rankings? What is being seen that gives us reason for optimism?
Well, it all began with a study that came out in May 2020 when Moody's Analytics ranked Tucson among the top 10 cities for strong post-COVID recovery. The study said that regions like ours are going to be attractive in the emerging economy because of our wide open spaces and our low population density. The analysts say that people are going to want to spread out because of the COVID virus. And Southern Arizona is a perfect place to do that. Another important ranking came from the Site Selectors Guild. These are the people who help find the best locations for businesses to move or expand. The site selectors predict that their clients are looking for mid-sized cities like ours for many of the same reasons the Moody's study ranked us so high. We had more than a dozen rankings that suggested our region is where people will want to go.
Judy, tell us about the Pivot Playbook. We know a group of business leaders in our region got together. They put a lot of work into this, so please tell us what it is and why we need it.
Tom, while we were getting all those great rankings and experts were telling us that Southern Arizona was poised for a strong recovery, no one here thought that it would just happen on its own. We knew that we had an opportunity in front of us that a lot of other communities didn't have. It was up to us to get ourselves ready and give our attention to all the things that we were hearing were going to be important for a strong recovery. Through Sun Corridor Inc., we just asked our business leaders to help us to build a strong and feasible action plan. And the response was tremendous. The effort put into this came at a time when many of those same business leaders were going through their own difficult time brought on by the pandemic. But they showed up at meetings. They did the research and they built a plan that we think gives us a number of action items that when we address them can bring all the great rankings to fruition. And the Pivot Playbook is going to help us do just that.
Now we hear from our Pivot Playbook sponsor, Bank of America, about their commitment and investment in the local community to fuel economic opportunity.
Hello, I'm Adriana Con-Romero, President of Bank of America in Tucson. Our support for Sun Corridor and the Pivot Playbook is directly connected to Bank of America's commitment to creating economic mobility and fostering recovery so that our economy is open to everyone. Since the start of the pandemic, Bank of America has been working with business clients of all sizes to tackle new challenges, such as helping to secure support under the CARES Act and finding solutions for changing operational and capital needs. We are also concentrated on workforce development. But Southern Arizona's economic recovery isn't about returning to the status quo, but building back equitably by developing a workforce ready to take on 21st century jobs and attracting top companies. And now, under the exceptional leadership of the Sun Corridor team and the expertise of those on the Recovery Plan Steering Committee, we are confident that Tucson will come back stronger and more competitive. That's what we're seeing and working toward with the Pivot Playbook. The lessons that we are learning from today's challenges are shaping the changes and innovations we need for a better tomorrow.
Let's go now to the business leaders who spearheaded the effort to build the Pivot Playbook. Steve Egan, a retired executive from Raytheon Missile Systems and aerospace industry consultant, graciously agreed to chair the Recovery Plan Steering Committee. And Joe Snell, president and CEO at Sun Corridor, provided much of the guidance and support as the committee did its work. Steve and Joe, nice to have you with us, and thanks for your input. Very much appreciated. Joe, I'll start with you. Tucson had been building a lot of economic momentum for a lot of years before the pandemic hit. Where were we back then, and how has COVID affected this region over the last year?
Well, you're right. Really good momentum over the last several years, especially from about 2016, where we saw Caterpillar choose Tucson for its mining headquarters. And really since that time, we've seen a plethora of companies either move in here or expand. And that was, resulting in really brisk home sales, strong economy, and everything looking good. But I have to tell you that when the pandemic hit, we saw an overnight change. We needed to adjust to not only the new reality the pandemic created, but look at the future and hopefully make some major adjustments from there.
In fact, Joe, we were fortunate in that the impact of the pandemic, although it was significant, it wasn't as significant as it hit other places in the country.
Joe, what adjustments did Sun Corridor have to make when it started becoming evident of the effects of the pandemic on the economy?
First and foremost, we spent a lot of calories and a lot of time making sure we were understanding what site selection looked like. What do the influencers, the site selectors, what's their new reality? And so we spent a lot of time really looking at those new drivers and sitting back and determining whether we can meet those demands. Fortunately, Tom, we were in a really good spot because over the last few years, we invested a lot in virtual capabilities, drone footage and being able to show stuff remotely. And I got to tell you that really paid dividends for us early on. The other thing was making sure that we responded very quickly and very aggressively on our sales and marketing. And then probably most importantly is, we tapped Steve and others. We wanted to launch this recovery plan right away so that we were ahead of the curve.
Steve, you were asked and you agreed to lead the steering committee. So when you did that, what were your initial priorities and how did your committee sort of approach its work?
What we started doing from the beginning is we were taking advantage of a lot of things that businesses were starting to do themselves. So what we tried to do is help coalesce that by taking and identifying with this group of business leaders, what are the focus areas that we needed to take out and consider in making this plan a success. So we came up with 5 different areas of focus.
Well, Steve, thank you for your input and for your leadership on the steering committee. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Tom.
Let's take a moment now and dive into those 5 focus areas. Joe Snell chaired the effort on company recruitment. Joe, please tell us why this focus area is so important.
For a few reasons. One, our ability to recruit companies and all the things involved with that are really a reflection of how competitive we are. So we have to make sure we get that right, that we can, if we're proficient recruiting companies, it means the entire business community is competitive with other markets. So we know that's a high priority. I like to look at it as an analogy of playing hockey. Through this process, we want to make sure that we're not just hitting where the hockey puck is, but we're skating to where we anticipate it will be.
You've mentioned our strengths. For example,
one of the biggest strengths we have is our ability to address the international supply chain changes. We're sitting at a really nice spot where goods and services move here so that we could capture distribution jobs, logistics jobs. So I think we're in a good position to tackle the international supply chain changes that are occurring. We have a very strong university system between the U of A, ASU, strong community college system, and that's being recognized really by the site selectors as a difference maker. I think one of the things that we all recognize is Tucson is an incredibly affordable city, affordable compared to most of the nation.
you know, it sounds like we have a lot going for us, but there have to be challenges ahead. So what are the challenges and what are the recommendations to meet those?
You know, the first thing we're really looking at is our economic blueprint that was designed 15 years ago that has targeted industries, which has driven this region's economic development efforts for a long time. Well, we've got to take a step back, make sure that those industries are still valid. Have they changed? Do we have new industries that we need to be focusing on? A couple things we got to look at. We have got to address our infrastructure. And this is an issue that's very important, specifically our roads. And I know people have thought I'm a broken record with this, but we have got to get our existing road infrastructure repaired. The roads are in tough shape, and we've got to come together and make that a high priority because companies, these logistics companies, they need, healthy roads to move product and people. Tom, we've been a victim of our own success. We've had a nice run the last several years. We've filled up a lot of the available industrial buildings, for example, on the market, and we have an absolute shortage of buildings 100,000 square foot and above. So we've got to encourage the greater development community in the nation to invest in Tucson right now to build spec buildings. We've got to adjust how we approach incentives. We've been operating on a really old model for about 40 years of dealing with incentives for primary companies. Well, we've got to take into account going forward the remote worker, the technical worker. Do they need daycare? So we need to really rehaul the whole system. So I guess in summary, we've got the plan to let us strike smart, but we also got to strike fast.
It sounds like a lot of thought, a lot of research went into this focus area. Thanks, and congratulations on all the success Sun Carter's had over the last several years.
Thank you. It's just begun.
Let's look at the next focus area of the Pivot Playbook, talent recruitment. And we're joined by someone who knows a lot about this area, Alex Horvath, Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at TMC Healthcare. Alex chaired the Talent Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Overall, now, how much of a factor is talent recruitment in the site selection process?
And we find that having readily available talent is the number one factor. Number two is that individuals can continue to grow and provide that talent from the area for that organization. And number three, that abundance of talent into the future for the strategic development is there so that the pipeline continues to supply the talent and that people can have the right skills and training to be able to support that organization going forward. Another factor has come into play, and that is remote work or virtual workforce. Everybody knows someone or even themselves who have been in this situation. And for that group, they will decide where they want to work, where they want to live, where they want to play, and they're able then to make that work for a community.
As far as the committee now, what recommendations do they have in this focus area?
Well, number one is we really need to promote our attributes. So that is number one. The wide open spaces, the stability, the safety, the sense of community, all really important. Number two for us is really getting our message out. And there's been a portal that's been created called thriveintucson.com that is all inclusive to support people that are looking for jobs here and for individuals that are seeking the opportunity to come to Tucson. And the dual career couples is the next area that we're really looking at because it's important for us when one individual has a role here for the second to be able to also accomplish the same.
Let's hear from Dr. Robert Robbins, president of the University of Arizona, about the importance of Tucson's university as a talent pool.
Hi, I'm Bobby Robbins, president of the University of Arizona. The University of Arizona is committed to partnering with local, regional, and international businesses to benefit Arizona residents. We help create opportunities and develop the talent Southern Arizona needs. Our contributions to the state's high-tech workforce are a point of pride. Our students work with world-class faculty, and they gain extensive experience in real-world applications of their knowledge. Our faculty and staff are among the world's best researchers and innovators, creating new ideas and technologies that drive opportunity for Southern Arizona's tech and entrepreneurial ecosystems. I'm very excited for the future of our region. Bear down and go Cats!
It's evident that talent and workforce are critically important to our economic development success. The next focus then is naturally the skill sets and what's needed to make sure our workforce has the training to fit the jobs being brought into our region. We're joined by Lee Lambert, the Chancellor of Pima Community College and one of our community leaders in workforce development and training. Good to see you again, Lee.
Good to see you too, Tom.
We've been talking about how important it is to have the right talent in a post-COVID world. Workforce development and training gives people the right skills for that world. So how important is this going to be in a post-COVID economy?
When you think about this whole notion of workforce development, it was important pre-pandemic, and I don't want us to forget how important that was. What the pandemic has done is exacerbated and accelerated the need around workforce development. So, what are we really talking about here, right? It's really about equipping people with the right skills for the right opportunities that are out there in our community. So you have a lot of opportunities in the community, but we don't have that strategic plan that starts to transition folks from an old world into the new world. And that's why we're so excited about the recovery plan, because it is focused on that transition to these new exciting skill opportunities in our community.
So it appears that there are a number of challenges that need to be addressed.
So what do we mean by reskilling? So there's different facets to the reskilling piece, which are components of the skills gap. So reskilling is really preparing you to go to do something completely different than what you're currently doing. And then another part of the skilling piece is the upskilling. So taking you in your existing job, how do we make you relevant and current? So we're going to upskill you based on that. And then there's re-careering, and then there's just the skilling, right? Someone coming out of high school needs skills. So there's different facets to what we really mean by all of that. And then it becomes so important to understand what's driving that. So we talk a lot about here at Pima, Industry 4.0, the 4 superpowers, artificial intelligence, mobile technology, cloud computing, and the Internet of Things. All that rolls into this notion of Industry 4.0, which is really the integration of the digital and the physical and the biological worlds. And so when you bring all of that together, that creates this need for skills.
So along with the points you're making, what recommendations is the committee making in the focus areas?
Some key recommendations are going to be around, first and foremost, micro pathways. So we're all accustomed to thinking about going off to college and going on to get a degree. But when you start thinking about it from a workforce development perspective, you realize it's not just about getting a degree, it's really about getting the skills. And so those micro pathways, those shorter bursts that are connected to that longer pathway of a degree becomes important. Also, we have to do more with our K-12 partners and really help to strengthen and expand the availability of career technical education, especially in the high schools, and also investing in more early college models. We're also at Pima been focused a lot on work-based learning. And so you hear a lot about apprenticeships, you hear a lot about internships, about on-the-job training. So we're building all of that into a more strategic, integrated way as part of a learning experience, so that you're actually going from your theory to actually being able to apply that theory in a practical way. And so IETs, Integrated Education Training Programs, are going to be an ever-increasing part of this. And so we're so pleased that we're going to be able to scale this up more.
So we've covered company recruitment trends, talent acquisition, and developing a workforce that suits the employers who move here. But what about where the company actually lands? What are they looking for in real estate? And do we have it? We're with Pima County Administrator Chuck Huckleberry, who chaired the Committee on Shovel-Ready and Real Estate Offerings. And Chuck, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
Let's begin by talking about the situation here in the region now. If a company wants to relocate here, how do we identify locations where companies can potentially move into?
It's really an iterative process. We first look at the land and who owns it. Is it private? Is it state? Is it county? Is it owned by the state land department? Once we've identified that, we look at the constraints. There are areas where we don't want people to build, for example, in the military protection zones, floodplains, the like. We have other areas that we want to preserve and protect the environment. So we go through that process. We have a GIS system that will identify lands that are most suitable for these particular locations, and that's how we get to the point of identifying a number of candidate properties that could be used for economic development.
What do we mean by the term shovel-ready?
Infrastructure is a very important part of this process. You have to have all the components of infrastructure to make a property really shovel-ready, which means you can have a road to it, you can have a sewer to it, you can have the electric utility, but if you don't have the water, it's not shovel-ready. The companies that relocate here, expand here, really want to be in business no later than 18 to 24 months after they make a decision. So it's really important that we have all of those components of infrastructure in to make the land developable for their purposes.
Based on everything you've said now, in a nutshell, what are your recommendations?
Our recommendations are to basically have a very good inventory of all the classes of shovel-ready that we've identified, such that we have an array of options for new companies or expanding companies to choose from. Once we've done that, we need to determine if there are any gaps that would prohibit any one of those classes from being utilized. And that means a gap is, do we have enough transportation? Is it transportation efficient enough? Do all the properties have all the utilities they need? And once we've then identified the gaps, we need to talk about how do we invest as a community to close those gaps. Once we've closed gaps, then we need to talk about how do we market all of these properties that are now available in a wide array to new companies and expansions who want to basically move into the region or expand in the region or move to Pima County.
We're back in the heart of Tucson for the final focus area of our region's pivot playbook, tourism recovery. Tourism is a critical part of the economy and a category that's been devastated by the pandemic. Let's chat with Brent Durad, the president and CEO of Visit Tucson, about how we plan to address this all-important focus area. Brent, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Would like to start by asking you to share with us some statistics that show just how hard the pandemic has hit travel and tourism.
Well, what we saw in the early days is about an 80% drop in overall tourism and travel, really devastating, especially for the first few months. But then that leveled off to about a 40 to 50% drop off. What that means in terms of taking it down to numbers is we lost about almost 3 million overnight visitors. When you look at the direct spending from visitors, that was down by about $1 billion, which is just massive, as you can imagine. When we take a look at jobs reduced by about 10,000 out there. Collectively, a huge drop, but we're starting to see some recovery, especially on the leisure front or vacationers.
So how do we fix this? What is the committee recommending?
How do we make a better Tucson each and every day? I think that's really the umbrella under which our recommendations fall. And when we take a look at that, for us, it means how do we get back to 2019 figures? For us, that was really kind of the pinnacle of tourism in Tucson. So that means $2.6 billion in visitor spending. And there's a lot of different actions that we're going to have to take to be able to get there. So when we look at, again, reopening businesses, part of this is these businesses are going to need help. And I think the city of Tucson and Pima County have done a great job availing themselves of federal dollars. And just now we need to make sure as these companies try to reopen, we need to look at how to get employees to come back. And we're going to work, I think, as a community to really start to address those issues. We take a look at the international borders, the land borders that we have here in the U.S. with both Mexico and Canada. We need to get those land borders reopened. You've still been able to fly, back and forth, between the countries, but it's really just been kind of looked at as non-essential travel. Well, for us, it's essential, and we need to make sure that we get those leisure travelers coming back. That's going to be really important. That leads into flights, and so again, we I think as a market, all of us here in Tucson and Southern Arizona, we need to support Tucson International Airport. We need to take these flights here locally, and I think other aspects as well. It's trying to invest more in tourism and travel marketing. And I think also downtown. Downtown's going to be critical. In 2019, we had just such a robust downtown. It had really hit its stride. Really kind of started with the modern streetcar. It had grown through the course of time. Rio Nuevo's done just a masterful job in terms of bringing investment into the downtown. We need to get that back. We need to find a way to get these businesses reopened. We have to get festivals and events restarted. We need to make sure that our local sports franchises, that they're well supported as well. So we have our work cut out for us, but we now have a plan. And we're just really eager to execute that plan. We're going to work together to do that as a community and as a region. And I think great days are ahead for Tucson.
That's the Pivot Playbook. It's an action plan that shows our region is not waiting for the post-COVID recovery. We're forging our own future. Tucson is in position to make huge strides in the competitive company recruitment market. We have a great opportunity that other communities don't have. With a last word on the Pivot Playbook, here's Wes Kramer, Vice President of Raytheon Company, President of Raytheon Missiles and Defense here in Tucson.
Hi, I'm Wes Kramer. The Pivot Playbook is an unprecedented effort for an unprecedented time. The COVID-19 pandemic affected all of us. Lives were lost, jobs were lost. Some families will never be the same. As president of the region's largest private employer, Raytheon Missiles and Defense, we were affected in significant ways. Working remotely, we had to remain productive and stay on track to keep our nation safe from global threats. Those unfortunately never go away. But with every difficult time comes opportunity, and Southern Arizona has an opportunity that can change our community for the better for years to come. For more than 6 months, our business leaders have been working on putting together this action plan, the Pivot Playbook, to make sure we are thinking ahead and planning for our future as a community. We're all part of it. I thank everyone who participated in putting this together. It's a plan that puts Southern Arizona in a position to recover and thrive.
This plan is big, it's bold, and it's achievable.
What excites me the most is that we're near the end of this pandemic and we're going back to business in Pima County.
This plan gets back to the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are making things and fixing things, and that's what really excites me.
I am so excited about the resources available for talent in our region.
This plan gives us the perfect recipe to become an economic juggernaut. Here we go.
So what excites me the most about this plan is the collaboration that's taking place. Sun Corridor has brought all of us together in terms of the business community and government to take a look at these different issues and just to ensure that we have a cohesive plan where we're all working together to bring Tucson back bigger and better than ever.